Hello, sunshine. I'm Alexi LALAS, and welcome to the State of the Union podcast, where we look at the beautiful game on and off the field through the lens of red, white, and blue-colored glasses. This week, we'll be continuing our talk about Euros as they roll on, Copa America as it rolls on, the return of Major League Soccer, Downton Abbey, our continued foray into the Downton Abbey world, and so much more. But first, joining me, as always, my friend, my colleague, my guiding light, David Mosse, a soccer savant and a Fox Soccer researcher and writer extraordinaire. Mosse, how are you on this Tuesday, June 22nd in the year 2021?
I am doing well, although this is going to be a very disappointing opening segment for me because I got nothing new on the television front. So my dad, who has been a critic of mine, my lack of contribution in this opening segment is going to feel vindicated after this week's pod.
Did we not make it abundantly clear last week how our listeners enjoy your suggestions, not because of the entertainment value, but because you are more often spot on when it comes to what you are recommending? But listen, I can forgive you. And I want the listeners and the viewers out there of the State of the Union podcast to understand that our friend Mosse is under a tremendous amount of stress and strain. And that happens when you are an incredible talent. We rely on David Mosse for a lot of stuff. And he is, as we've said time and time again over the last couple of weeks, knee deep in Copa America. That's just going to go right into Gold Cup. And so much so that we are going to try to limit today's State of the Union pod to an hour. We're going to attempt this. As those of you that are faithful listeners and watchers know that when we first started this pod, it was pretty limited to an hour. We were pretty good about making it an hour. And then the pandemic happened and things changed, right? And it ended up being an hour and a half, almost 2 hours at different times. We haven't gotten a lot of complaints necessarily about the length of the podcast. And look, in the podcast world, you look at Joe Rogan or anybody. I mean, there's a 3-hour podcast and stuff like that. We haven't gotten a lot of complaints, but Mosse did make a slight request before we came on air to make sure that we at least try to limit it today because he's got a lot to do. And I want to respect that, Mosse. So the fact that you don't have anything television wise, I think it only is, I'm not going to yell at you too much because I think it shows how knee deep you are and how focused you are on getting all of the research done. Has it been a problem, Mosse, in terms of the amount of pressure that you are under?
No, I'm getting through it. I mean, there are worse jobs in the world than having to put together research notes for Messi and Neymar and Copa America games. So
what is
you get enjoyment out of it, but
let's get a little peek behind the curtain. What is the bane of your existence when it comes to tournament research in normal circumstances, and then maybe in particular what's going on with Copa America?
Well, today I have, I put together this roster, this document before the tournament with rosters from every team and caps and goals. And now, because of an annoying request from one of our analysts, I have to go back and add jersey numbers to that document today. So that's going to be a pain in the butt.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. I made that request yesterday. God, the talent, the ridiculous request that they had. Yeah. So it had position, it had where the player plays, it had goals, it had caps. And yet I was having to cross-reference the numbers. And to be fair to you, Mosse, yes, it's just a column, but it's more work. And there's the potential for, especially in Copa America, where it's kind of loosey-goosey in terms of everything that's happening, for those numbers to change. So I do appreciate you doing. It has been, when we do World Cups, there is a kind of an official way that FIFA does things, and they have lineups specific as to the moment it comes out. It's pretty clockwork when it comes to FIFA. They have tactical lineups which actually show us where everything is. Not so much when it comes to CONMEBOL and what's happening with Copa America. But thankfully we have people like David Mosse that are keeping us in line. Now, have you been able to watch anything? I mean, have you watched any of Downton Abbey?
Have not started yet, because when I do sink my teeth into that, I want to be able to rip off a bunch of episodes in a row. So I don't want this like stop-start nature to it. So I am going to wait until we get through, as you mentioned, the Copa America and the Gold Cup. So a little over a month from now is when I will start that and we'll really get going.
Okay, well, I am already knee deep in it. I have been able to get through the first season. I think I'm into the second season right now.
Oh, wow.
I get it to a certain extent. So once again, I don't want to give it all away, and I don't want to spend too much time on Downton Abbey, but I get it. I have thoughts. I have big thoughts. I'm going to reserve those for a little bit later when you start watching it, and then we'll have our grand finale when we finish it all. And we're going to power through however long it takes. But I am into it. I do look forward to watching whatever next episode is. I do find myself saying, all right, I'm going to get to this episode and then I'm going to turn it off and go to sleep. And yet I continue on. And I'm sure a lot of people out there are in the same type of predicament.
Is your wife watching it as well?
She has already watched it. And so she will come in and she will roll her eyes or say something smartass, or even just kind of sit down and watch a little bit. So she knows what's going on. But I have made her promise not to give anything away and not to come in and even directly or indirectly influence anything that is happening so that I can get the full effect of it. Perhaps
when all three of us have watched it, we could have her on the pod as a guest to talk about it.
Really? Would you like that? I'm okay with that. Yeah. I'd have to ask her if she would want to do that. She's very private and very shy when it comes to things like that. But who knows? Stranger things have happened, and we've had other interesting guests, and she would definitely be interesting. All right, well, maybe we'll do that. So that's where I am from a television perspective. Although the Ted Lasso trailer came out this week, and I know a lot of folks out there have been watching the first season, and now there's two more seasons coming automatically. And the second season, the trailer is out, and even the trailer makes you feel happy about what's potentially to come. And I know a lot of people are looking for when that finally drops from a soccer perspective. All right, Mosse, you ready to light this candle?
Yep.
All right, let's get right into it. We're going to start off with Major League Soccer, which is back, and then we're going to get into Copa and Euros and stuff like that. But Major League Soccer came back. It came back after a 3-week hiatus out of respect for the international break and obviously the onset of these tournaments happening this summer. It came back with a vengeance, lots of different stories and lots of different things to talk about. I think let's start in Austin, shall we, Mosse?
Absolutely.
All right. So look, it happens almost seemingly every year as Major League Soccer continues to expand and new markets come into play, and within those new markets, these new stadiums. Austin, the long and storied and even you'd say controversial history when it comes to how this came to be. Well, they finally got their moment. Austin finally opened up their stadium and with their team. And it was a week where actually it was a soft launch earlier in the week with the United States women's national team opening up the stadium. And then Austin, the MLS team, the main tenant and their home, that was opened up on the weekend. And it's always wonderful. And it's always interesting to see the people that have been there from the start, even before an MLS team was, a twinkle in anybody's eye. There were people there on the ground that were thinking about this. And then the whole way that it all came from Columbus and the pre-court controversy and all of that kind of stuff. But then to see Austin have this moment of celebration. Now, the actual performance on the field was not anything we're going to put in a time capsule, and they still haven't yet scored a goal because it ended up 0-0. But it was still a massive celebration. And even from afar, you could feel how important it meant, how important it was, and how much it meant to that city, and not just the soccer part of that city, to that city. And we had our friend Matthew McConaughey, who is the Minister of Culture over there with Austin, on hand, dressed from head to toe in verde, in green, which is obviously a big theme, leading the chants. He had his bongos out, all of this kind of celebration for what hopefully is going to be a long and fruitful and successful place that becomes not just a place where you go and watch your team play, but a communal type of cathedral and religion to give you a place where everybody comes together. And from the outside, it looked great. I can't wait to actually get there and see what everything is, not just in the 90 minutes that happens in the game, but the lead up to the game, the experience in the stadium, what that stadium means to that community, to that area, and ultimately to this soccer team. So that was fun to see. This Matthew McConaughey situation over there, Mosse. We actually brought him up on the Copa America coverage these past couple of days. Do you think that it gets to a point where it gets too much and people are over it and people start rolling their eyes, and not from the outside, because who gives a crap what people from the outside think, but on the inside, do you think that it will wear off in time?
I do, especially if the team struggles on the field. They are winless in 6, as you mentioned. Listen, he's playing his part right now. I mean, he's meant to be a cheerleader. He's not a soccer guy. It's not like David Beckham in the sense that he's actually meant to contribute in terms of acquiring players and making soccer-related decisions. Matthew McConaughey is a celebrity owner in a totally different sense from David Beckham. So he's doing what we want him to do right now. I mean, he's invested and he's excited and he's trying to pump everything up. But yeah, if they keep struggling on the field, eventually this is going to get old. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if the most interesting and entertaining part of your team is your owner playing bongos and wearing a green suit, then you are going to have problems. And look, that is not to say that this team hasn't already been successful. Let's be honest. We've seen MLS teams that have gone on the road for extended periods of time and then come back to their stadium and have had much fewer points than I think the point per game ultimately that Austin was able to achieve in this stretch. But now you got to amass points at home, and you got to give those people in that cathedral something to scream and yell about and be excited about. And it's, yeah, I think Matthew McConaughey is a smart guy. I think he understands that this was needed. This is part of his job as an owner, to use that celebrity and to use that attraction that he garners and bring people in that otherwise wouldn't even know about what's going on. But it has a limited shelf life, and I think he understands that, and I think he will probably transition out of the much more overt type of minister of culture and kind of hand it off to in the very capable hands of the supporters group, and that supporters culture that is continuing to grow, the different supporters groups they have, the different traditions that they have or will create going forward. So right now it's all good. It's fun. I don't think that there was any part of it that was cringy, unless maybe you're from Columbus, and no matter what they do, it's going to be negative and cringy for them. But I think in general, it was fun. It was great to see. What do you got?
Speaking of, it was somewhat fitting that on the same day that Austin played their first match at their new stadium, Columbus played their final match at Columbus Crew Stadium, which was the first soccer-specific stadium in MLS history. They beat Chicago 2-0, Gyasi Zardes with both goals. We were there for MLS Cup last year. You played in that stadium. I'm sure that evoked some emotions in you. Yeah,
it was, there's a lot of stadium types of moments this past week and this past weekend. And historic Columbus Stadium, for what it has meant to Major League Soccer, for what it has meant to American soccer, let's be honest. So it has the association with the U.S. men's national team and women's national team, but certainly from a men's perspective, the 2-0 types of things and those historic games that were played there, and specifically why the U.S. men's national team chose to play their games, and very important games, and take teams to that because of the incredible support that they have gotten there. And then from an MLS perspective, back when it opened up, I remember at that point I was where was I playing? I think I was playing in Kansas City for the Kansas City then Wizards at the time. And when that opened up, I vividly remember seeing it on television for the first time, walking into a bar and seeing it up on television and mistaking it for a European broadcast. And that's how important and monumental it was, and how different it was from our traditional American broadcasts in American stadiums. And a lot of these stadiums were shared and predominantly made for football. And so the sight lines were different. The optics were just so different in terms of how it broadcasts. And it fundamentally changed everything. And let's be honest, it's a glorified high school stadium. Okay. And yet it was so important. There is no then Home Depot Center a few years later without it. And so you got to start somewhere. And so kudos and thank you and hats off and tribute and respect to Lamar Hunt and to the Hunt family for establishing that at a time when the soccer specific stadium wasn't really something that we talked about. And in doing so, setting a marker that then everybody that came after said, we are going to beat. And, yes, Phil Anschutz with the Los Angeles Galaxy, and then the Home Depot Center completely took it to a whole nother level, but you got to start somewhere. And so it was wonderful for them to finish it. And by the way, Columbus is moving into an incredible stadium, this 2.0 when it comes to soccer specific stadiums. But to have that last moment and to see Gyasi Zardes, who has meant so much to the Columbus Crew organization, especially after everything that the Columbus Crew has been through over the last couple of years, to have that moment of celebration with fans back in. And by the way, for the most part, it was 100% capacity in the league this past week. And there were a couple of different things. You had Portland, which, Portland's going to Portland, right? They had 80% capacity or something like that. It's just this random 80% number. And I'm sure that there's a reason for the number, and Merritt Paulson up there will tell me why, but it was 80% capacity. Okay, fine. You want to do 80%? Fine. Most of the places were 100% capacity. So it was great to see these huge and big crowds back and everybody back in celebrating and cheering and doing all of that. There were, Toronto still that's playing down in Florida doesn't have a crowd, and NYCFC is still playing over at Red Bull Arena. So there's still some weird stuff going on, but it was great to see the crowds back and people able to sit there and to cheer and to stand and to sing and to do all the different things that we've missed for so long at a level that we haven't seen since pre-pandemic. What you got, Mosse?
Well, you mentioned Portland and Toronto. Portland beat Sporting KC 2-1, and they got Sebastian Blanco back. He came on as a sub in that game, his first appearance of the season. Toronto lost 3-2 to Orlando. Pozuelo made his first start of the campaign. He had come on as a sub in the previous game against Columbus. And Daryl Dike made his 2021 MLS debut, which is something I did not think was going to happen. I must confess, I thought he'd get snapped up right after the loan with Barnsley. He might still go before the end of this European summer window, but for now, he's an Orlando City player again, which is obviously an incredible addition. And so just an overall injection of talent in the league, getting guys like Blanco and Dike and Pozuelo back on the field. It's good news. More stars to follow. Huh?
Well, okay. So you mentioned the Daryl Dike situation. So let's dive into that for a second here. I like you. That was surprising. I mean, look, he's an MLS and Orlando player, so it's not necessarily surprising that he is playing for the team that he is part of. But given what has happened over the last 5 months with his loan, do you think that this is a problem? In that, do you think that this means that all the hype that was attached to him isn't as much as we thought it was going to be? Do you think that there's actually isn't going to be a move? Do you think that Orlando has set the price too high, or why do you think this is happening?
I think Orlando have made the calculation that the more he plays, the more his stock is going to go up, which is taking a little bit of a chance because he could get hurt.
Right.
He could have a dip in form, but no, they really believe in his talent. And so they think the longer they hold on to him, they're actually going to be able to sell him for more down the road.
And there's a chance that he could also be playing for the U.S. in Gold Cup too, which, if he has another great tournament. So yeah, maybe it's a calculated risk, but it is a risk ultimately. And if they have a bird in the hand right now in terms of offers, they're saying no. They think with time and with more games here, maybe later on in the summer, he becomes that much more valuable. We benefit from an MLS perspective, and Orlando benefits because you have a great person and player on the field that we get to see actually trying to score goals. Speaking of goals, Mosse, did you watch any of the Atlanta game, the Atlanta-Philly game?
I know where you're going. I received a couple of tweets about the Glesnes strike because you might recall I previously went on a rant on this pod about how it drives me crazy that it's always these long distance strikes that win the AT&T Goal of the Week awards. I will say I have no issue if Glesnes wins it, but I stand by my overall point that I'm way less impressed by a center back closing his eyes and striking a ball from 30 yards out and having it go in the top corner, as opposed to a well-worked team goal like some of the goals that Belgium has scored at the Euros, or a play where a guy dribbles past 3 defenders and floats home. So I stand by my overall point, but this one was absolutely amazing. I'm not going to deny that.
Well, how dare you? No, wait. Oh, it's absolutely amazing after you just said it's basically a person who doesn't even have any real skill or ability, just closing his eyes and hitting it from, and you said 30, by the way, it was more than 30. Okay. When he hit it, and it was a screamer. And what makes it so impressive is, I was talking about before the pandemic, the last game before the pandemic we actually did LAFC in Philadelphia, in which he scored. And that one, it wasn't even the run of play. It was actually a free kick, another screamer like that. So he does have it evidently in his arsenal to be able to do this, or or it's just two complete anomalies that we have been able to see, and we are the beneficiaries because, as you said, it was incredible. Now, Atlanta in that moment loses the 3 points and only has to settle for one in front of another huge crowd there. But if you're gonna give up a goal, let it be a screamer like that. And if you haven't seen it, I tweeted it out. You should go find it. It is phenomenal, especially. It hits the stanchion and it makes that noise, and it's just sick in the best possible way. What else, Mosse, from an MLS perspective? 35 yards is what our good friend Jeff Hernandez is saying over here, but I don't know. I mean, if that's the official word, fine. So we're going to split the baby here. Mosse, what else? Did you watch any of the Sounders, who are right now the best team?
That's
in
where I was
going
to go next. Yeah, Seattle benefiting from the fact that Raul Ruiz was somewhat surprisingly left off the Peru Copa America roster, and so he's playing for them. He scored. They beat the Galaxy 2-1. LAFC dominated but held to a 1-1 draw by Houston. Diego Rossi is playing in these games, though. I know you felt like he should have been on the Uruguay Copa America squad. So a lot of MLS players in Copa America, but MLS teams are benefiting in some instances from players being left off those rosters.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to talk more about Copa America and some of the problems that are associated with some of these teams there. But yeah, I mean, Diego Rossi, it blows my mind that he's not involved. But to your point, we get the benefit of it. Now, I guess we can finish it up here when it comes to Major League Soccer. Do you think, Mosse, that Bob Bradley is in jeopardy right now in terms of being on the hot seat from a coaching perspective? Because it has not gone well yet again this year for an LAFC team that we expect much more from and has plenty of talent and has shown over the years that they are good. And Bob Bradley's a legendary coach right now, but it's not happening for LAFC. And there are not just groans. There's a faction out there that is really saying, hey, something needs to change. And obviously you can't fire the whole team.
I don't. I still think they're playing better than the results, and the breaks will even out and they'll surge up the table eventually. And just overall, I think he's built up some currency there, winning the Supporters Shield, getting to a CCL final. He's done overall an excellent job there. So I think even if this season ended up being a disappointing one, I wouldn't get rid of him. Yeah,
I mean, I think he's going to have a long leash, and rightfully and fairly so, given what he has done. And what he has done isn't just about the wins and losses. I mean, he came in and basically established the identity and the personality and the character and the soul, if you will, along with others. But he was heavily and is heavily a part of defining what LAFC is. But in doing so, he has defined it as a super club. They came into this league. There wasn't a soft launch. This was right from the get-go. This was a team that was going to compete. This was a team that was going to do things historically well, and they did. And therefore, you set a level of expectations. As I said, I don't think that there's going to be a change, but if this was Real Madrid, or if this was Barcelona, if this was another team, it wouldn't even be a question. The fact that you are a living legend when it comes to the game, that's all fine, but Janet Jackson, what have you done for me lately? I don't think that that's necessarily, like I said, going to happen with LAFC. But if you are truly this team that accepts nothing less than greatness, then this is far from what you have promised yourselves and what you have promised everybody else. And we'll see if those changes happen. It's still a long season, still a long way to go. And as we get through summer, if LAFC hasn't turned that corner and looks like a team that is not just competitive, but it is good, then I think those calls are only going to get louder because you have this incredible fan base that you have cultivated over the last years is based on giving them a team that is not just good, but that is great. And that is not what you have right now. And the leadership right now needs to figure out, is it a situation where these players are going to come good, or is it a situation where whatever Bob Bradley has done has run its course and somebody else could come in and do better with the players that you have at hand? I don't know. Like I said, I don't think that there's going to be changes. It would surprise me if there was a change anytime soon when it comes to Bob Bradley. Anything else from an MLS perspective out there, Mosse?
That's it.
That's it. Well, anyway, we're like I said, we're going to continue to talk about MLS. We have MLS broadcasts that are happening this week. We'll be doing some MLS broadcasting, so it continues on. And as I said before, I love the fact that people are able to now go to the stadiums and experience. I was talking to someone that, and I'll end it here. Part of the experience was getting to see these people that you sit and stand and cheer and scream with, and they are around you. And a lot of times you're a season ticket, so it's the same faces, the same people that you are seeing. And for the last year and a half, for a lot of these folks, they haven't been able to have that relationship. And you might not even know these people, and the only reason that you've become friends with them is because of where your seats are in this experience that you have together. And I was talking to someone who finally got back and was able to see these people that he had become friends with simply by being a season ticket holder, and to get back into that proximity and to be screaming and yelling and having a good time. That meant so much to him. And I'm sure it meant a lot to a lot of people who for the last year and a half haven't been able to do that, and certainly haven't been able to do it to the extent that we have seen with this past week. And it's only going to get bigger as we continue on. So enjoy your soccer out there, whether you're watching it on television or whether you are lucky enough to be able to go to it in person and have that experience again. Enjoy it when it comes to Major League Soccer or any of the leagues that are out there. All the different leagues that are happening, men's, women's, everything that's out there. A lot of these places right now, you are able to get tickets and you are able to go in 100% capacity in most of the places out there. So enjoy it. Enjoy it. Enjoy it. All right, we're going to take a real quick break. When we come back, we're going to have plenty when it comes to Copa America and Euros. Don't go anywhere. All right, we're back, and we are going to dig right into Copa America, which we are well on our way and well into right now. And it's been a really interesting tournament. For those of you out there who have watched it, you will know that right now there is Brazil and everyone else. And if Brazil were to lose this, it would not only be a historic failure as far as I'm concerned, but a massive, massive surprise. That's how good Brazil is. And obviously they are playing at home, and nothing that has happened yet, either in the way that Brazil has played or the way that other teams have played, can convince me otherwise right now. This is Brazil's to lose so far, Mosse. Mosse, how has your Copa America experience been? What have you seen? What has stood out to you on and off the field?
Well, I've enjoyed the action on the field. As we've talked about, the organization of the tournament has been a little wacky, so we've had to deal with that. But and actually what you just brought up is where I was going to go first. I think the biggest overriding question with this tournament right now is how big is the gap between Brazil and Argentina? I said last week I didn't think it was as big as people were making it out. And if Brazil does play Argentina, and I suspect those two will meet in the final July 10th at the Maracanã, that it would be pretty close to a 50-50 game. My argument took a hit after this latest Argentina performance because their first two games were against Chile and Uruguay. So, not being overwhelmingly impressive in those two games, you could chalk it up to the quality of the opposition. But Paraguay is an opponent that you'd think Argentina should beat, not convincingly, but solidly. And they didn't. It was kind of a labored 1-0 victory. Paraguay actually had more possession, and so you guys really laid into Argentina afterwards, and it seemed like you and Stu and Ali on the desk are all now pretty convinced that the gap is fairly sizable between Brazil and Argentina, right?
We brought up my wife earlier, and she even texted me during the Argentina game asking me, is Argentina playing soccer? Because she's seen enough soccer to know when it's good and when it's bad. But I also brought up something on the broadcast that I think sometimes we forget or just don't want to look at. And that is this. Yes, Brazil absolutely is a higher echelon. However, this is 10 teams. All right. When we're about to do Gold Cup coming up. And when we look at the amount of teams, first off, when it comes to CONCACAF here, but also the disparity between the haves and the have-nots, right? And US and Mexico and, that upper echelon relative to so many other teams and small teams. It is amazing, the disparity. When it comes to CONMEBOL, yes, you have your Vino Tinto of Venezuela that are oftentimes at the bottom end. But what separates it? I mean, it's all relative. And down in CONMEBOL, all right, the great and the not so great, it's very, very competitive. And we are seeing just these 10 teams. By the way, there's no guest teams. It's just these 10 teams that have incredible familiarity for playing each other just in friendlies and in qualifying, which they're in the midst of. And after Copa America, they're going to go back to qualifying, playing against these same teams and these same players. And so I think that parity that exists in CONMEBOL is unique. It's even unique to, for example, Europe, where you have a real difference in the highs and the lows out there. And I think you're seeing some of that. All that said, though, I think that we in the world, once again, the expectation from a team like Argentina, given the talent that they have, and yes, given the history, is that they are going to be something better than what we have seen so far. Because even in this situation of parity, when we're watching Argentina play, it lacks something. I mean, Messi gets the ball, runs 100 miles an hour at the opposition. Every once in a while it goes off okay, but for the most part, somebody eventually triple teams him and they get the ball away from him. And then they kind of redo it, and they'll give up a chance here, or they'll make some boneheaded play here. There's no real flow. There's no real rhyme or reason. There's certainly no creativity or beauty associated with Argentina. And I know Argentina isn't always the most creative, and there is a rawness about them that at times is wonderful and successful and even admirable, and maybe in a certain sense pretty. But we talked last night about the lack of beauty and romance when it comes to South America. And in general, South American soccer, we kind of look to them to be that. And I know a lot of it stems out of Brazil, but in general, the types of players, the tradition, the history, the culture, the way that soccer is played there, and the way that soccer is viewed there has made it so we expect something more than, I guess, what we're getting right now from Copa America. Is that fair?
No, absolutely. Yeah, that the center forward position is interesting for them. I like Lautaro Martinez, but he hadn't scored in 4 straight games. He was poor against Uruguay, got replaced by Joaquin Correa in that game. And so Scaloni decided to give Aguero a chance against Paraguay. Aguero had played a total of 11 minutes in the first 2 games. And it's interesting because Aguero just signed with Barcelona. So assuming Messi re-signs, those two are going to be playing together at club level. And you wonder how that's going to factor into Scaloni's decisions with the national team moving forward. But in any event, he gave Aguero a chance against Paraguay, and Aguero wasn't very good. So they're still kind of searching for a center forward to put the ball in the back of the net there. Papu Gomez, a player who I love, did score the goal, and then they end up winning. And he also started Di Maria. So Messi had 2 of his buddies. That squad is an interesting blend between youth and experience. And Scaloni went with a little bit older lineup with Messi, Di Maria, and Aguero. Those 3 have combined 350-something caps. And Messi in this game, by the way, equaled Mascherano for the Argentina record at 147. So, yeah, Scaloni is still kind of trying to get the right combinations there. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting. As far as Brazil, listen, I know Peru beat Colombia, and I know Peru got to the final of the last Copa America, but I still feel like this next game for Brazil against Colombia is a step up in class. There's a different feel in a game against Colombia than there is playing Venezuela or Peru. So, we're taping this on a Tuesday. Tomorrow, Brazil do face Colombia, and I'm curious to see how Brazil handled that game, because I think it will be, like I said, a little bit of a step up from the opposition they've faced so far this month. So that game, I think, will tell us a little bit more about how big this gap is. If Brazil go out and take care of Colombia, no problem, then yeah, my argument that the gap between Brazil and Argentina isn't that big is going to really take a hit then. Absolutely.
And keep in mind, this is still a tournament, right? And by the way, this is a tournament of 2 groups of 5. So rather than the 3 games that you usually get in a group, you get these 4 games, and so everybody's jockeying, and only 2 teams drop out. So most of these teams are going to find a way to make it, and then that might be a change of philosophy and the clicking up a notch or 2 of the intensity that's going on.
And there were a lot of reports yesterday before the game that Messi wasn't going to start, and he ended up starting, but Scaloni did make 6 changes from the previous game. So yeah, the way these managers rotate their squads and are trying to use as many players as possible and give their stars rest. Argentina clinched a quarterfinal berth. So now you think Messi wouldn't play the last group game against Bolivia, but that would create a pretty awkward gap between this game and the quarterfinals, because they're idle for a round, and then if he doesn't play against Bolivia, so Scaloni has to think about that. I'm wondering about Neymar with Brazil. They've clinched a quarterfinal berth, so is he going to rest him for the last group game against Ecuador? So sort of load management here for the Stars, and just in general, how these managers rotate these squads has become sort of a big talking point in this tournament.
And, watching Paraguay, and obviously a lot of focus and attention from a U.S. perspective, having seen Miguel Almiron and what he is, it was really interesting because they use him in a much more central type of position. I mean, he is the playmaker for that team. And look, I'm not saying that Miguel Almiron is Lionel Messi, but what I'm saying is, if you watched that game, and if you watched these teams during the tournament, Messi will drop deep. He will get the ball. And then one of the most beautiful things is when he gets the ball, either beats a player or is past a player, and the ease in which, while having the ball, by the way, he creates separation. And he's one of those players, you see them through the generations, that have this innate ability to be faster with the ball than without the ball. And the way that Messi creates that separation, it's breathtaking. Yet, even in the same game, you are seeing Miguel Almiron take the ball and create that separation. I just thought that was amazing to see. And I'm not saying, once again, I'm not putting them on the same level, but in that moment, that ability to get the ball, turn, and create separation was pretty amazing, to juxtapose the two and to see what was similar and what was different. And there was a lot of similarities in the way that they do it. And I know they're different body types, but it was fun to see, because we're used to seeing Miguel Almiron much more in a wide type of situation, but he is the man that drives that team, literally drives them forward in his ability to do so.
And the other game that was interesting was Chile and Uruguay, played to a 1-1 draw. Chile, I don't know what to make of them, because all the articles I had been reading was about how there's this tremendous harmony in the camp and they all love Martin Lazarte, the coach now. And then there's this barber incident with them letting a barber into the team hotel, violating COVID protocol. So yeah, we weren't sure what to make. Was he going to bench all the players that came in contact with the barber? And what was that going to do to the chemistry of the squad? But they still seem happy and they played a good game and they get a point, which was enough to move to the next round. While the other flip side is Uruguay, which I talk about a blend of youth and experience. They're still trying to get that right. There are some really talented players in the midfield, guys like Bentancur and Torreira and Valverde, and even younger guys like Facundo Torres and Brian Ocampo, who they hoped would emerge in this tournament. But then you still have Suarez and Cavani up there, and Godin at the back, Muslera in goal. So trying to get that blend. Both Uruguay and Chile have these golden generations, but they're hoping for inject some fresh blood into those squads, hoping something good emerges behind those golden generation guys. And so, what have you made of Uruguay so far in this tournament?
Well, I think a lot of it is the same when it comes to Chile and to Uruguay. Age is just a number, except when your job is dependent on you being able to function from a physical perspective. And if you cannot do it because your body has changed and or broken down, then that is a real problem. And I'm not saying you don't get more mature and smarter as you get older, but there comes a point, I've said time and time, Bruce Arena famously said, the international game is a young person's game. And the problem, I think, for both of these teams is, to your point, while there are younger players, when we see them, unlike, when the US plays, where we get this hope that, oh my goodness, this is heading in the right direction. These players are only going to get better. I don't think that when you see some of the younger and the next generation of Chilean or Uruguayan players, that you say, oh yeah, this is either going to be better than what we had, or at least able to live up to what we have, which is why I think they're going to go with the ones that brought them, for the next year and a half, because the World Cup's in November next year. I don't see Chile, if they qualify, or Uruguay, if they qualify, I don't see them looking drastically different come November of 2022.
Chile at least have unearthed your favorite player of the tournament so far.
Ben Brereton. Okay. He does not speak Spanish. And yeah, look, this is from the soccer gods in terms of content out there. Okay. And peek behind the curtain. You are hoping during tournament situations that these types of stories happen. So Big Ben just falls in our lap. manna from the soccer gods' heaven, right? And he is a player who has a Chilean mother. He does not speak Spanish, has played for England at the youth setup, has grown up in England, is an Englishman, but has obviously the opportunity to play for Chile, given his heritage and his mother being Chilean. He has taken it, and he was really good, actually. First game he scored, but I actually thought he was better yesterday. We're recording this on Tuesday. I thought he was better yesterday in the way that he played, holding up the ball, relieving pressure, making some really, really smart runs, and maybe giving them something a little bit different. And so it's a fun story to follow. You should check it out. Ben Brereton, right? Am I saying that correctly?
Correct.
So that's a fun story for Chile. But do you think that either Chile or Uruguay is going to look drastically different come November of 2022 relative to what they are right now? And they continue with qualifying just around the corner here.
Not really. I think Uruguay have more potential there. I do like some of their young players. Like I said, guys like Facundo Torres and Brian Ocampo. Maybe somebody will emerge there. Hey, maybe Diego Rossi will find his way into that squad.
That for me, and look, I know I'm biased because we see him all the time. But when you have an Uruguay team that lacks any type of speed anywhere, this is a team that is crying out for somebody to be able to put the ball down, take players on one-on-one, and put the fear of God into the opposition so that they have to adjust. They have none of that. They have nothing out wide when it comes to speed. They certainly don't have anything when it comes to speed up top with Cavani and Suarez, but you need someone to be able to provide. They also have nothing creative in that midfield, Lodiero type of situation when it comes to their midfield right now. So they have no speed, they have no creativity, they can't score goals. Other than that, Uruguay's doing great. But don't count them out, because they do have that history and that pedigree of just finding ways to win.
It's interesting how at the international level, Brian Rodriguez seems to be held in higher esteem than Diego Rossi. While watching both of them in MLS, it's no question that we think Rossi's the better player. It's funny when there's that divide between club and country.
Well, we always say form is fallacy, right? And you never know ultimately what's going to happen. Maybe this Gold Cup will get the Uruguayan Federation to open up their eyes and maybe be looking or on the lookout for something different. Anything else Gold Cup you want to discuss, Mosse?
Copa America.
I'm sorry, Copa America.
No. Let's move on to the Euros.
All right, let's move on to the Euros. Where do you want to start with the Euros? I think while we look at the upper echelon of Copa America, when it comes to Euros, and this is kind of a surprise and an emergence, if you will, albeit from a classic and historic team. But I mean, a lot of people right now are saying that Italy is the best team right now in the Euros. Would you agree with them?
I do think they've been the best team so far. 3 wins out of 3, 0 goals conceded. I was high on them going in. I rarely get anything right, but I was right about Italy. Roberto Mancini, who, by the way, I never rated that highly as a manager before, but he's done a phenomenal job with this team. And incidentally, another country that didn't qualify for the last World Cup, the Netherlands, they're doing very well. Also won all 3 group games. Frank de Boer, who knew? Maybe he is a good coach and he just picked the wrong last 3 or 4 destinations.
He just needed the right situation. Okay. All right. He just needed to have the stars align for him. Yeah. I mean, and I know it's kind of funny what we're saying. Hey, the Netherlands and Italy. How about that? I mean, these two historically incredible teams, but they have had those dips as we talked about. And I think when it comes to Italy, there were less expectations that it was going to be this good so quickly, and in the way that they're doing it. So they're not only they're kind of taking the best of both worlds. That classic, ability to defend and to stifle, which has resulted in them not letting a goal in. But it's not as if they're parking the bus or that they're playing an unattractive style. And I think that's what gets people excited, is that this is an entertaining type of Italian team that is also successful and doesn't simply rely on a great defense. And the Netherlands, stocked with talent, but maybe this is the time when they finally able to translate that into something great. And look, you're going to have France and you're going to have Belgium waiting in the wings, and England, it may or may not be coming home. Another great scene as Denmark, which we know had such a horrible start to the tournament with the Christian Eriksen type of thing, as they continue to roll on there. What else stood out to you, Mosse?
Yeah, just one note on the Netherlands. Jorginho Wijnaldum just signed with PSG. It looked like he was going to go to Barcelona, but PSG swooped in. Barcelona did end up signing Memphis Depay, so they did get one Dutch player. But PSG fans are wondering which Jorginho Wijnaldum they're going to get, because at Liverpool, he was very good, but he didn't score a lot of goals. He only had 2 Premier League goals in 38 appearances this past season. While with the Netherlands, he's this prolific goal scorer from midfield. He got 8 in Euro qualifying and now has 3 already in this tournament. So it's going to be interesting how PSG uses him, if Pochettino can use him in a way where he's, popping up and scoring lots of goals too. Another interesting player this tournament is Alaba for Austria, because they have this similar dilemma that Canada have with Alphonso Davies. Alaba at club level has now become a center back. That's how everybody views him. He played exclusively at center back for Bayern this past season. He just signed with Real Madrid, and every analysis I've seen of that signing is treating him as a replacement for Sergio Ramos. So that's all he's going to be there. But you think with a team like Austria, can they afford to play probably their most talented player at center back? And so that's a dilemma that the coach has had. And at the start of this tournament, he's played mostly at center back, but the coach has moved him around a little bit. And so, that's been something kind of interesting to follow.
All right. If you had to pick right now, and as you mentioned, Italy is perfect with 3 wins. Belgium is perfect with 3 wins. Netherlands perfect with 3 wins. And then the other groups, you have the Czech, and we're recording, like I said, on Tuesday morning. And so Group D, which includes England, they're going to continue to play. Sweden leading Group E and France leading Group F. If you had to pick right now, who would you pick to win the whole thing, Mosse?
I think if the draw allows for this, I think we could be headed for a France-Italy final. I do want to make one point about England. Now, England play later today against the Czech Republic. So by the time you listen to this, Jadon Sancho could start today and score a hat trick. Who knows? But he hasn't played a minute in the first 2 games. And I've seen this coming from miles away. They don't appreciate what they have there, because they view everything through these Premier League goggles. And the fact that he's over there in Germany doing what he's doing, to me, he's always been sort of undervalued in that setup. And the fact that he didn't get on the field during that drab 0-0 draw against Scotland, where they were screaming for an injection of creativity. And I'm sorry, they have to get over that. People listen to this podcast know how I feel about Sancho. To me, he's just a cut below like that Mbappe Haaland level. I consider him one of the handful of best young players in the world. And with England, it seems like he gets tossed in the pile with a bunch of other guys, and when he shouldn't be. To me, he's clearly their, along with Foden now. I mean, those two to me are clearly their most gifted young players. And so it's been frustrating to me to watch him be underutilized so far.
Are you suggesting that this is punitive? Are you suggesting that, they have, England colored glasses that everything is viewed through, and that bias is actually making them pick a team that is not the strongest team, simply because this young man decided to go a different pathway and to go and play in the Bundesliga?
I don't think it's punishing him. I just don't think they give as much weight to what happens in the Bundesliga. Oh, yeah, he's putting up these crazy numbers over there, but that's the Bundesliga. It's a 1-team league. Who cares? A guy that's performing well week in and week out in the Premier League, that carries a lot more weight for a manager like Southgate than anything. Because if you imagine, now, of course, I do think the Premier League is better than the Bundesliga, but it's not that much better. And, imagine if you took Jadon Sancho's numbers in the Bundesliga, 20 assists a season, and transferred over to the Premier League, and a player was doing that, there'd be no question. The whole team would be built around him. But for some reason, because it's happening in Germany, it doesn't seem like they give it as much value.
Do you think it's naivete? Do you think it's laziness? Do you think it's just systemic and that it's just built in? I mean, look, the opposite has often happened in terms of the way that we view English soccer. I mean, that whole trope of it's just, they don't care about possession. They just kick the ball and it's all about heading and everything is in the air. And we know that that's not necessarily the truth. But do you honestly think that the leadership and the coaching leadership when it comes to the England setup either willfully ignores it or just doesn't understand it or care about it, or just hasn't watched a whole lot? Is that why they're at this point?
You're saying in terms of Sancho over in the Bundesliga?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think honestly, most people in England don't watch anything other than the Premier League. And so they don't fully appreciate how good this kid is. And we covered the Bundesliga for many years, so we got to see it every week. I think he's a transcendent talent. And so it's been frustrating to see him sitting on the bench there. By the way, I'll finish with this. I did mention I think it's going to be an Italy-France final. The last Euros was France-Portugal final, and those two meet tomorrow. So really looking forward to that game. France and Portugal have played some famous matches at the Euros over the years. In the 84 semis, France won with a late Platini goal in extra time. Then in the 2000 semis, France won again with a late Zidane goal in extra time. And then, of course, the 2016 final, which Portugal won 1-0 Edich with the extra time goal while Ronaldo was off injured. So yeah, really looking forward to that one. That should be a terrific game.
All right, so the Euros roll on. Anything else, Mosse, from a Euro perspective?
That is it.
All right, we're going to take another quick break. When we come back, it's time for Ask Alexi. Don't go anywhere. All right, we're back, and it's time for Ask Alexi. And once again, we have gotten a plethora of audio calls, and so we picked 3 of them, and we are going to play those. First one comes from CW, who has some questions about our best all times. So let's hear what CW has to say.
Hey, Alexi and Mosse. My name is CW. I'm the head men's soccer coach at Cape Fear Community College and the owner of Wilmington Football Club in Wilmington, North Carolina. Love the podcast. My question for you is, you can only pick one male and one female to start your national team. And while it hurts me to leave Oguchi Onyewu out because he's my all-time favorite player, I'm going to go with Landon Donovan and Julie Ertz, strictly because of versatility and the leadership that they bring. Just wondering, who would you pick? I know there's a lot to choose from. Definitely very interested in Mosse. I think you're underrated on the podcast. Keep up the great work. I love to listen to it while I'm driving or while I'm in the office. Thanks.
All right, CW, and I looked him up. I think his name is CW Ponton. He is the head coach, as he said, of the Cape Fear Community College and one of the owners, I guess, of the Wilmington Football Club. So he has started his team, all-time team in history, I guess, of U.S. players is what he's asking, with Landon Donovan and Julie Ertz. 2 solid picks if you were to start a team. And I guess it gets into the philosophy of, and it's not theoretical, because every time we have a new league or we have an expansion team or something like that, this is what the leadership has to think about: is when you start a team, where do you start it? Is it from the back? Is it down the spine? Is it about the best soccer player? Is it about the fame and therefore the most attention? Is about the person that's going to sell the most tickets? All of that kind of stuff. I think he's probably coming at it much more from a competitive standpoint. Is what are you going to build your team around? And certainly you can do much worse than Landon Donovan or Julie Ertz. Absolutely. I would agree with both of those, with those things. But I also have a belief that you need a good goalkeeper. Okay. And so I would be tempted to go and take someone like a Tony Meola or a Tim Howard or a Hope Solo right there. And I can be talked out of it, but I think that's something that I would do. And so I'm starting from the back. Like I said, if I had to pick a male player, it would be like a Tony Meola, because not only can he save the ball, but he's really good with his feet. Probably, if I'm looking back when it comes to goalkeeping, he's probably the best that I've ever seen with his feet. And he, by the way, played in an era where, well, first off, the rules weren't the same. And that even when the rules changed, it wasn't as if he was being asked to play out of the back with his feet, and yet he was as good with his feet as many field players out there. So I think that would be one that I would do. And then on the other side, when it comes to the female side, I want a leader. And by the way, Tony's a leader. I want a leader that is able to combine it with the ability on the field. And so I would look at someone like Julie Foudy. So I think those are a couple that I would go with. Anything stick out to you, Mosse?
Well, it's interesting that for the men, he went Donovan. So he valued the creativity, the scoring and setting up goals. And then for the women, he went Julie Ertz, more of a lunch pail, do the dirty work kind of thing. The same line of thinking, if you applied the same line of thinking with the women that he did with the men, it would be more of a Mia Hamm, a Michelle Akers, a Carly Lloyd. So I'd be curious to know why he would, sort of departed with the men and the women. I would want a sort of creative player to build a team around. So I would go Donovan or Dempsey for the men, and then either Mia Hamm or Carly Lloyd or Michelle Akers for the women.
Oh, that's a good one. Michelle Akers is good too. And Carly Lloyd. I mean, it's interesting because when you say Carly Lloyd in her prime, so when is her prime? I mean, I don't know. And by the way, her prime from an age perspective, if you said it was 5 years, 10 years ago or something like that, it might not necessarily be her prime from a soccer perspective. And she'll be the first to tell you, and she'll tell anybody that listens, that she has gotten better with age. And I'd be interested to ask Carly Lloyd maybe what she feels is her prime. And knowing her, she'd probably say, "I'm in my prime right now. How dare you?" Okay, let's go on. I think Daniel from Tuscaloosa has a question. All right, Daniel, what do you got?
Hey, Alexi and Mosse. This is Daniel from Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Listen to you guys' podcast every week. Really appreciate it. Really enjoy it. Wanted to ask a quick question. You guys had a guest on a few weeks ago that said that they thought that the U.S. would be competitive, looking for maybe a win in the 2038 World Cup. Just wanted to see what you guys' opinions were, if you thought that was going to be the time frame sooner or later. Just see what you guys think. Thanks for all you guys do. Bye.
All right. Daniel from Tuscaloosa. Where's Tuscaloosa, Mosse, again? Do you know where that is?
Alabama.
Is it? Okay. I hear it a lot in reference to football and stuff like that. So Alabama. Okay. Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Daniel over there. He obviously listens to the pod. And all of these folks are, by the way, giving you props, Mosse. They love you as they should, and some are even saying that you don't get enough credit. So if that's my fault, I apologize for not giving you enough credit, Mosse. But I think I say each and every time how much I love you and how much we all appreciate what you bring to our lives and to our soccer lives. So if I have to reiterate that, I will. And yes, you are a very, very important piece and continue to be. So he wants to know, we had, he listened to the pod where we have Stephen Mandy's son and talking about that he felt that the U.S. men's national team would legitimately compete for winning a World Cup in what did he say, 38, 32, what 38?
I think he said 38. Yeah. What he said was the 2026 World Cup being here is going to spark another boom, which is going to pay off 12 years or so after that. And so
got it. So he wanted to know, Daniel wants to know, as he said, whether we agree with that. I mean, look, as we said before, we were a handball away in 2002 from going to a semifinal of a men's World Cup. So things can happen. I mean, we damn well better be competing for a World Cup come 2038 and 2034 and 2030 and 2026 when it's played here in the United States. And by the way, in Qatar in 2022. And I don't think that it's just, me beating my chest and waving my American flag to say that kind of stuff, notwithstanding the fact that we didn't go to the World Cup last year. And I know each and every time that World Cups come around, either a player or a coach or a pundit, somebody will say, yeah, I believe that they can win it this year. And everybody will jump all over them as if saying that will automatically make it not happen, or saying that means that you have no sense of reality when it comes to what's going on. Is it difficult? No. Would I put all of my money in Vegas on that happening? No. But I think that it'll happen before then. You look at the wonderful talent that we have. And yes, it's evolving, and there's plenty of talent around the world for other teams too. But strange things happen, and you have to win. You don't have to win, but it's a 7-game type of situation here, and you don't have to win every single one of those games. And the soccer gods may smile upon you. You may get an own goal here. You may get a red card here. You may get something happening with the scheduling here. Could be a million different things that ultimately lead you to that path to that promised land. But I don't think, once again, that believing and saying that you think that can happen is out of the realm of possibility and is delusional. And a lot of people do. A lot of people feel that when you say it, you are not only hurting your credibility, but you're hurting the credibility of American soccer, because they feel that it's so out of the realm of possibility and so delusional that it's actually detrimental to possibly say that. And once again, if you believe it, it has to come from a sense of something more than just your red, white, and blue coursing through your veins. And so when I say that, absolutely, there is a history. And yes, there is red, white, and blue coursing through my veins that is informing that. But I don't just say it to say it, if and when I say it. And I don't think a lot of people do when it comes to out there, despite the criticism they will get. Mosse, what do you think? It happened before or after? Who knows? 42?
Steven Mendes did attend that Nations League final, Mexico-US, and he, I think, was very caught up by the excitement of the game, because he texted me afterwards, said he's moving up his timeline to 2022. He thinks they're going to win the World Cup. Well, I mean, is the way he framed it when they're going to contend for the World Cup, because I think it's important to understand the U.S. is probably not going to win the World Cup the first time around that they have talent good enough to do so. Soccer history tells us that, there are going to be some near misses first. So I think, even if you buy into this collection of young players now, and you think that pretty soon the U.S. is going to have elite talent, it's still going to take a few tries at it probably to actually break through and win it. So, 2038, that sounds about right to me, actually, of when maybe sooner. I would err on the side of sooner than later, but I don't think 2038 is that outlandish.
All right. Way to go out on a limb there. Okay, let's move on to Lucky from Frisco, Texas. Let's see what Lucky has to say.
Hey, Alexi, this is Lucky from Frisco, Texas. Got a question that's MLS related. I know the FC Dallas Academy has a great academy that produced really good players. How come that hasn't necessarily translated to the FC Dallas MLS team? Love to hear your thoughts. And Mosse, I love the way you pronounce all the Brazilian players. All right, thank you.
All right, Lucky. We've actually talked about this a lot. I've talked about this with a lot of people, and it's a question that a lot of people have, but it's also not necessarily unique to FC Dallas. FC Dallas has hung their hat on development and developing young talent and having an environment that not only develops, but then fosters and sells on this young talent, and that it is a ripe place for not just the United States, but for the world to shop in. And they have a track record in terms of the amount of players that have been developed and then have been sold on and have gone on and done and are doing some good things. But they're also not the only team to establish themselves as a developmental type of environment that doesn't necessarily translate to their success on the field. So why is this? Actually, if you look at where the problems are from an FC Dallas perspective, it isn't in the development, as we said. They are able to develop players that have featured and have been solid players for their first team. Their problem actually has been their scouting and recruiting and ultimately their decision-making process when it comes to the incoming talent that they haven't developed. And so they haven't been able to find that perfect marriage of the two, which you do need. You can't be all development. And maybe if you are focused on development, you certainly can't, go away from it and not have the trust. But when you do decide to spend money, when you do decide to go outside of your development system, you better have people in place that are able to assess what the marketplace is, and able to assess the talent out there so that you're pulling somebody into this system that works, and they have not been able to do that. Mosse, any thoughts on FC Dallas, or just in general when teams decide to go the developmental route, and some of the challenges that come up when you do that?
Well, just to make Lucky happy, I'll say maybe FC Dallas should sign a Brazilian player like Éder Militão or Thiago Silva or Fred.
Yeah, Lucky was very, very happy. I mean, we've told the story about when I was down in Brazil. At that point, I was working with ESPN, and they had Fred playing. And so, I mean, it is the simplest possible word that you can get in the soccer broadcasting world. And yet somehow, when we all started sitting around with our Brazilian colleagues, the one syllable simplistic Fred turned into like a 2.5 syllable Fredgy, that just continued on and on and on. And I know it's authentic, and I know everybody loves it when you do that, but it is amazing how the Brazilian way of pronouncing things can take such a simple word and make it so complicated very, very quickly.
It's so funny. The U.S. women just played friendly against Portugal, which we did. And I put together an audio pronunciation guide of Portugal for JP Della Camera. And I made it like too authentic. And JP chastised me for that. He said, I'm not going to be able to make some of these sounds that you're saying. So he made me do it again, more Americanized. And that got in my head so much that when I did an audio pronunciation guide for all the teams in Copa, for all the Spanish teams, I did it super authentic, rolled the R's. And while Brazil, I went out of my way to make it Americanized. So John Strong reached out to me and he said, you realize the Brazil one, ironically enough, ended up being the least authentic of the bunch. Like, you sounded like an American saying Brazilian names. Well, every other one, you sounded like a Spanish-speaking person.
The pronunciation culture in broadcasting soccer is, I mean, we could deep dive in that for forever, and all the different ways that people believe it should be broadcast, do broadcast it, or have broadcast it in the past, and the pronunciations when it comes to that. So good question there from Lucky relative to what's going on. Anything you want to say about development or anything like that when it comes to MLS or anyplace else?
No, I mean, as far as FC Dallas, I mean, some of their prized products like Weston McKennie and Chris Richards didn't even play for them, so that's part of the story of why they didn't benefit on the field from it. But yeah, I mean, it's a matter of holding on to these guys before selling them, so you get some return on the field. And
as I've said time and time again, if that is what you are basing your entire business on, that's fine from a business perspective in terms of selling players on. But if you are calling me up and trying to sell me on that as a season ticket holder, I think that's a hard sell. I don't care that you are developing talent. I don't care that I am watching players that are going to go on. How does that help me compete in MLS? How does that help me get any closer to an MLS Cup? And if you're taking that money and driving it back into the product, that's fine. But at some point, I need to see it on the field in terms of a team that I can support and I can justify spending that money on. And that's a balance yet that FC Dallas has yet to achieve. And so we'll see if they do that in the future. Thanks to everybody. Thanks to CW. Thanks to Daniel. Thanks to Lucky. Thanks to everybody that sent in the audio questions out there. Once again, our phone number, if you do want to be like the cool kids that are sending in the audio questions, 657-549-2297. That's 657-549-2297. And if you listen to the broadcast and the podcast last week, you will know that one of the callers was really happy that there is something that is not part of social media that enables him to be a part of this podcast. And it made me happy, because I know we focus so much on social media out there, but it is, as I said before, just a small part of our world. And sometimes we get caught up in it. So you don't even have to be part of the social media world out there to be a part of the State of the Union. 657-549-2297. All right, Mosse, we're going to take another quick break. And when we come back, I will have my one for the road. All right, we're back, and we've come to the end of yet another State of the Union, and we've done pretty well, Mosse, right? We're coming in just a little bit over an hour, I would say, when all is said and done. So definitely shorter than most of the podcasts that we've had over the last year. We'll get you on your merry way, Mosse, so you can get back to work and get us prepared and ready for all sorts of Copa America stuff that's coming, MLS stuff that's coming down the pike that I know you're working very, very hard on. All right, so it's time for my one for the road. If you will remember last week, for those that made it to the end of the show, you will know that I talked about Jamie Vardy's involvement with the Rochester Rhinos. And the resurrection, if you will, of the Rochester Rhinos, this once storied and great team in Rochester, New York. And look, Jamie Vardy's association actually made a lot of people, including myself, think about Rochester. And we haven't thought about Rochester in a long time. But, I want to make an addition to the story. And that is this. Just because the Rochester Rhinos went away doesn't mean that soccer went away from Rochester. Okay. Yes, those of us on the outside didn't think about Rochester anymore necessarily, and certainly not in the way that we had. But soccer has continued on there. And when you talk about, teams like Flower City Union over there in Rochester that plays in NISA, they have continued to beat that soccer drum to that community. And so in these moments, and now with Rochester coming back in, they're going to have multiple teams now and potentially competing teams, depending on which leagues that they're going to play in. And they're going to be competing for hearts and minds and competing for those dollars and those soccer dollars out there. And we talk about the soccer wars with a Z out there. I do think that there is enough space for multiple teams to coexist in markets, but, it's a competition. And, Flower City Union, what they have done out there deserves attention and deserves credit for beating that drum and flying that flag for a city and for a market that, as we said, has been so important in the past. And it remains to be seen ultimately who's going to come out, or if everybody can kind of survive and feed off of each other. But we also know that, even in the best of times and in the best of situations, it is a struggle and it is a slog. And yes, it is a labor of love, whether it's in Rochester or any place else. When it comes to the business of soccer, and in particular, the business of lower division soccer out there, it is not for the faint of heart. It is, even in these heady times and these wonderful times where we have so much going for us and where we've progressed and evolved so much as a soccer playing nation, it is still a difficult type of proposition and a business both on and off the field. And so kudos to the men and women out there who day in and day out come in and work hard for their sport and for their community. People like Flower City Union and what they mean and have meant, and hopefully will continue to mean, even as new competition comes into market. And Rochester is not going to be alone in that, as we see Major League Soccer coming in with a new division and a new league that potentially can compete against existing leagues. And once again, we'll see if the best league wins out, or we'll see if people can coexist, because the more soccer teams, the more leagues, the better off we all, because then there's the more opportunity for players, more opportunity for men and women off the field to be involved in front offices, more coaching opportunities for men and women. And that's what we want. We want people to have that ability to look at soccer and to see a future in soccer. I do clubhouses and spaces, and many, many times over the last year, I've talked to people who have said, I want to be in soccer. I want to work in soccer. And they don't look at it as a way station. They don't look at it as something that's just passing through in order to get to another sport, a bigger sport. They want to be involved in soccer. And the more soccer teams we have, the more soccer leagues we have, and the more people fighting day in and day out and welcoming that struggle and accepting that labor of love, the better off it's going to be. The better pathway and the more opportunities. And I take immense pride that things that my generation has done has made it easier for this generation. And I also give incredible thanks to the generation that came before me that enabled me to have more opportunities. And you're passing it on, and that's what we're doing. So shout out to Flower City Union. Hopefully they'll send me something, because I really like their logo. It's really kind of cool. You should check it out. It's nice and simple in a day and age where we talk so much about logos. And by the way, the Chicago Fire, the rebrand has happened, so you should check that out in the logo wars. It's not just the soccer wars; it's the logo wars and the branding wars that exist when it comes to soccer. Mosse, anything before we go?
That's it.
All right, we're back at it again this week, as I said, with Copa America and with some MLS. So check us out there on Fox. And there's so much soccer going on right now. Hope everybody is having a wonderful summer. Hope everybody is staying safe and staying sane. Hope if you're lucky enough to be able to get out to an actual venue to see a soccer game or to see a concert, to see anything else, awesome. I can't wait to join you and we can scream and yell together. Until next week, thank you so much for tuning in and downloading and reviewing and rating and subscribing and doing all the different things that our listeners and our viewers do. Thanks so much. We'll see you again next week. And as always, size the day.
You like that clip? Well, my State of the Union podcast drops every week. Subscribe now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.